Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. It's polymer clay like you've never seen it before. This week on the 302, we sit down with artist Joseoh Barbaccia and check out his creative and cool works of clay. Get ready to be inspired. The 302 is headed your way. To be in the world of an artist is a wondrous thing, and we are in the studio of artist Joseoh Barbaccia, and when you see his work, it's going to blow your mind. Trust me. Joseoh, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I tried to explain to my husband, the kind of work that you do before he actually saw it, and he was kind of like, and I said, it's like if you could touch an impressionist painting. Tell me about your work and how you would describe it.
Okay. It is very tactile, Jackie. And I use three basic methods to put the polymer-based clay onto the piece of glass you see here before it's cured. And one of the methods is to flatten the clay. So the clay comes in pieces, or comes like this. It's just a little square, and some are larger than others, and there are a certain amount of colors, about 30 colors. And what I'll do is I'll mix the color I want. So I may take two of those, that green and a white, and lighten the colors. And I'll mix them in this pasta maker right here, in the rollers. And then what I'll do for this method is I'll run that flattened piece like this. I'll run that through the actual attachment that makes, in this case, the angel hair pasta. Nice. So I can go that thin. And I have different settings for this, different attachments for regular spaghetti or linguine or whatever the case may be for the particular piece that I'm doing. And that's one method of applying the clay. Mm-hmm. Another method is to cut the shapes out. And I think like a mosaic. Yes, more like a mosaic. There's a piece right behind you. It's a tribute to Alma Thomas. She was an artist during the 40s, 50s, I think into the 60s before she passed. And you can see that the background is the flat cut pieces. And I use that, in this particular case, I use that with the extruded spaghetti-like forms. And then there's a third method that I use, which I call pinch and place. And that is, again, flattening the clay, mixing the colors that I want, flattening the clay, and just taking a pinch of the clay off and placing it on the glass to form, in that particular sense, the pinch and place. That's what I did that self-portrait that way. That pinch and place is a little more like the Impressionists, where you don't have hard lines, and the forms and colors are more readable the farther away you get. And when you get close, it's almost more abstract. Yeah. Because the colors aren't blending. So those are my three methods of applying the clay. There's a whole other section of creating these pieces that has nothing to do with the clay, and that's the preparation. And that I do on my desktop computer. Mm-hmm. So what I'll do is say, with this piece in particular, I took a photo of a bowl full of seashells. Mm-hmm. But of course, it wasn't what I wanted, and it wasn't ready to be transferred into clay. So in order to get it ready, what I have to do is take it into, usually use Photoshop, take it into Photoshop on my computer, and I'll adjust contrast, I'll adjust, which is, light and shade, I'll adjust saturation, I'll bring out the colors even more. One of the reasons why I do that is when this is cured and when this is baked in an oven to harden it to hard plastic, the colors dim a little, the saturation goes out of them a little. So what I want to do initially is, on the computer, is to pull up the saturation to make it pop, you could say. So that at the end of the process, the colors are still vibrant enough that I don't paint these things. All the colors that you see on them are the original clay. I don't add paint to them. So what I'll do, again, back on the computer, what I'll do is saturate things, contrast it. Sometimes I'll change forms out, add other forms, manipulate some things, perhaps perspective. I'll add maybe 2 images, one on top of another, integrate them, particularly with the window light piece. I had 2 different images there. And then what I'll do is I'll print out a single piece like this and just check it and look at it and think about how I would add clay to it. What was going to happen, how I would start, how I would form. And I do this from upper left to lower right for the most part, because when I'm adding clay, I don't want to hit the clay that's already there, because then I have to start over for that section, blah, blah, blah. So I usually work my way in. And when I'm doing that, I have to prepare to say, okay, I'm working on this section now, this shell will be, this shell will be first because it's underneath, and then I'll put that shell because it's the topmost shell on. So then I'll work my way down that way.
And it's just little rolls of just little strands that you just place in there.
Little spaghetti strands, yeah.
That's really cool. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to learn more about Joseoh Barbaccia and his wondrous art. Stay with us.
Hi, Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long, and I love what's brewing on 302.
Welcome back. Now, Joseph, I have to tell you, we go to a lot of really fancy places with some really expensive art, and you should see the look on the people's face whenever I talk about touching the art. But you can do that. Once a piece is done here, it's a kind of thing that you can actually touch it, and it won't, the oil on your fingers won't damage it.
That's right. It's a polymer. It's a hard, after it's cured, after it's put in the oven at 275 for about 30 minutes, in the case of the thinness of these pieces, it's a very hard plastic. What I do sometimes with the pieces is I'll also coat them, put a lacquer, a type of varnish on them, so that further protects them from anything else. Mostly I do that for a UI reason, to keep the sun from desaturating the colors and sucking the color out. But it's also a good protection with people who want to touch them, and they're very tactile. They're very texturized. Yeah. So the first thing people want to do, and I understand that, is to reach out and touch it.
Absolutely. Now, we did an earlier show at the Rehoboth Art League where you had some pieces, and you actually had an exhibit in the back room, and I just fell in love with window light, and I bought it and took it home and told my husband, just touch it, you can do it. So talk to me a little bit, when it comes to your pieces, like window light, what was the inspiration? How would you, I'm going to do this. How did that occur to you?
Well, that fits right in with the 302, because I've been in Delaware now for about 5 years, and I've always enjoyed the shore, the beaches. So often I would go walking in Cape Henlopen State Park or Rehoboth Beach or Lewis, places like that, and take photos. So the inspiration basically was the Delaware beaches and the parks here in Delaware. And some of the photos, if you take photos, if anybody knows about taking photos, a lot of it has to do with working on those photos after you take them to make them a little more interesting, to bring out certain parts of the photo. And again, I do all that before I start to work with clay. So basically my inspiration has been the beaches here in Delaware.
And now there is one image that you did of seagulls, just really a bunch of seagulls that I thought was really breathtaking. And it's amazing how you can take little rolled up spaghetti pieces of polymer clay and just make them, you know, pop off the canvas or the piece of glass, as it were.
In that particular piece, it was, you could take it as seagulls, come to think of it, but it was snow geese.
Okay.
It was snow geese. And I, saw them on the side of the road. They come through here, through Delaware at certain times of years, and you have to place yourself, just like regular photographers do, you have to place yourself at the right place at the right time. And luckily for me, I did with that particular photo that I took. And the application of the clay in that particular instance can get kind of, I don't know, detailed and finicky. But it can also occur to pieces like this where you're, working on these little dots on these shells.
So how did you do that? Is it just like instead of laying them this way, it's...
I use this tool. And it just has a little cutter on the end of it and a little scoop on that end to press down. And what I'll do is if I'm going to put a black dot in, I'll just cut a little piece off like that and pop it in. And then it's a matter of patience and repetition. Patience is the word, and repetition. But it also can get sometimes meditative, where you can lose yourself into the work and you're not thinking about time or energy or, how much, when's lunchtime or anything else like that. You're just concentrating in the work. It doesn't happen all the time. And because I was raised on television, and then with television, there was a commercial every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes
Attention span.
Attention span is like, oh, got to take a break now. But after doing this for 10 years, the type of work for 10 years.
So you're so focused, it's meditative, but do you ever put an intention in your work? Because I know that some people, they will put an intention of something, a gift beyond just the physical picture or portrait or piece itself. Love, prosperity, well wishes. I mean, do you ever put any of that in there, or what do you think about while you're doing it, if you think about anything other than the process?
Well, there's a couple of things. I don't, in most of the work, I don't intentionally put an idea in. It's really purely more visual and playing with color, playing with tints and shades, and also getting the image to be somewhere between representational and color and form. But some pieces do have an intention to them. Like when I did the portrait of Alma Thomas, my intention was to bring her name and art into people's lives. Like, who is that? Who's Alma Thomas?
Way of honoring her.
Exactly. But I would say most of my pieces are just what they are, and hopefully I allow the viewer to bring their intentions into it, because after all is said and done, after the artwork and the art object are finished, it's communicating what you've done with other people that's important. And in that communication with somebody, looking at your work, or listening to your music.
Right. It's all about the participation. When they look at it or hear it, how does it make them feel, and what do they bring across?
Exactly, the communication.
Well, we have so much more to communicate. We'll be right back.
I'm Alexandra Deutsch, and the 302 is as chic as any AMLO gown.
Welcome back. We're here with artist Joseoh Barbaccia, talking a little bit, or actually a lot, about your work. And I have to tell you, one of the pieces that really stands out, because it's not just an image, it's like two things in one, is the piece called ID. Tell me about that, and how did you get that idea?
I do, it seems almost self-referential and a little egotistic, a little bit, but I do a lot of self-portraits. Rembrandt, who also did a lot of self-portraits.
So Van Gogh did a bunch of them too.
And Van Gogh as well. And both of those people have impressed me with their work, obviously worldwide. They've impressed people with their work. So I don't think it's that egotistical to do self-portraits. And in this case, with ID, it's kind of twofold. Your ID in a federal or a state sense is your picture on your license and your thumbprint in your FBI record.
Do you have an FBI record?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. But
that's another show.
but that's only because I've worked with them for a time. Anyway, so in combining those two things in a piece, there's also that meaning that we were talking about earlier, and that not only am I a human being, but I also have some connection to society. And my connection's obviously a photo of myself and my fingerprints, which are like nobody else's fingerprints.
Sure.
So that's how that piece came around. And again, in doing that image, I utilized the applications on the computer to bring them both together, bring both the thumbnail, the thumbprint, and the portrait together.
So you basically had to blow up your thumbprint and marry it with your face, and then figure out how to strategically place color so that while it was still your thumbprint, it was also you.
Right, the thumbprint in the piece changes hues and tints and shades as it goes, as it is described, around on the piece. So it both reflects the face underneath it, as well as delineates its own self as a thumbprint.
Well, it's really, really brilliant, but I would be remiss if I didn't, in our last segment, talk to you about the stained glass work. Now, you've got a couple of panels, and when I saw them at the Rehoboth Art League, as did the rest of our crew, we were like, oh my gosh, that's clay? We couldn't believe it. But I want to talk specifically about the biblical panels that you have, that you've given a modern touch with technology.
Ah, yes. Traditionally, the stained glass pieces and the inspiration came from stained glass pieces in a church that has been since dismantled, located in Dublin, Ireland. But the stained glass pieces were saved, you know, to resell. And again, traditionally, when there are saints or angels, they hold items that are traditionally identified with them, either sometimes with saints, what they were martyred with,
Sure.
or with angels, it may be what they're identified with, like a trumpet or something like that. And what I wanted to do was to place in these stained glass pieces something a little bit more contemporary that may not have been exactly identified with that saint or angel or archangel, but something that might elicit a little bit of humor and make it subtle enough that maybe initially at first glance you don't notice, because you're thinking, oh, stained glass and saints or
Sure.
churches or religion or whatever. One of the, and I'll go back to how these can be made with clay. Normally the clay is opaque, but because it's a polymer-based clay, it also comes in a translucent block. So you can use that translucent clay, add a little bit of color to it, and then place that in an opaque framing, just like you do with glass and lead in a traditional stained glass piece.
It really is amazing. And I gotta say, putting the iPhone with the charging cable, I mean, everybody wanders around with their charger, so I gotta say, it was brilliant. Now, there are gonna be people who are gonna say, I've got to see more of your work. And you go to your website, and there's work, you show folks, it's not just this is just the latest thing in your world. So really quickly, we've got like a minute left. If you can kind of talk to us a little bit about the different kinds of items that you used going back to the 70s, is that right?
Oh yeah.
You know, in your career, so when they go to your website, what they can see.
Okay, so we go back to, I studied at Tyler School of Fine Art in Philadelphia, and traditionally started with oil paints, but also had sculptural classes, and so I started working in wood. Then I started traveling, and with travel, your art supplies have to be a little bit lighter. So it came to colored pencils, and I did that a lot. In my travels out to the west in California, I lived in New Zealand. I lived there for a while, came back, visited the Pacific. And once I settled down on the East Coast in, the 1980s, late 80s, then when I settled down again, I started working, and I had a studio, started working in sculpture, again with wood, with string, wrapped string, with metal, small metal carvings. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and for the past 10 years now, I've been working with polymer clay. There's a positive aspect to that in working with a lot of materials. It keeps your creativity moving and growing. And there's a negative aspect as far as commercially goes, where if you want to get into a commercial gallery, they need to understand that this is the type of work that you're going to be doing, and so that they can develop a sales and a marketing approach to their work.
Well, we can't wait to see what you do next. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us on the
for coming down.
We'll be right back. Aren't Barbaccia's creations amazing? Now here are some other cool things to check out in our community. For more information on Joseoh Barbaccia's work and his exhibits, you can visit joseohbarbaccia.art. That'll do it for this week's episode of The 302. Make sure you follow us on Facebook for some amazing behind-the-scenes content you just won't get anywhere else. We're going to leave you now with a day at Rehoboth Beach. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on The 302.